DRC continues to be a country which is progressing, but there are still a lot of needs, and some of them are unique to parts of the country. Particularly, as you may know, Eastern DRC has a very unique context, plagued by conflict, and then again, the country as a whole is grappling with the impact of its rich mineral resources and the negative fallout from how different players engage with those mineral resources. That on its own is creating a lot of tension, but the ultimate result is that children's well-being is at risk from the impact of conflict, but also from the engagement in the mining sector.
We cannot do business as usual. We have to have a different model of doing development in a region where there's been protracted war, communities are not stable, it's been an emergency environment, you cannot get stable funding. Most of the time the grants are short-term, 6 months, maximum 1 year. So the funding has been very complicated, very difficult to attract staff. Nobody wants to come to work for 1 year, 6 months. Difficult to retain them because the context is very difficult in terms of insecurity, non-family posting, without enough funding. So it's very complicated. The community themselves are on the move. You do a project today here because it's stable, next time that place is not stable, you have to move and do another project. So with this experience, it becomes imperative for the partnership to come up with a new way of doing business that takes cognizance of this very unique environment. That's why we are talking about fragile context business model.
Yes, indeed, it is possible if the root causes of fragility are addressed. This is a bigger question because most of the previous activities we have done have been responding to the symptoms of fragility. People have to flee and then you assist them. People have to be denied services and then you go and fill the gaps. But we are identifying also that there are broader issues that are affecting our context. And that's why in this fragile context business approach or business model, what we are looking at is ensuring that we have integrated programming to a point where all the 3 pillars of world vision are taken care of, in a sense that we know that we have transformational development, we have advocacy, we have humanitarian and emergency affairs. So when you follow strictly this track of programming, it still responds appropriately to the flexibility we are talking about. When the situation begins to stabilize a little bit, you begin to go more towards developmental activities. In this context now, those will be recovery and rehabilitation. When the context changes, again, you draw back into HEA activities with advocacy as a cross-cutting issue.
The problems in the DRC are so urgent that I absolutely cannot take on some bulky old business process if I can get to the same outcomes in a better way. And so the national office and all of us in this room working together could create real learning. You know, somebody said, well, we should have a learning center for the fragile context. The learning center for the fragile context is called the national office. And so we might be able to discover new ways of working which can help the entire partnership because they've been proven, they've been deepened, and they've been owned by the national office.
What's most important to us are the higher level principles. What our focus is, the targets, what our basic modes of working together is, which Dave has just described in terms of coordination and working together, the primacy of the national offices and empowering them to do their jobs and letting management be held accountable for that, and then finding the most effective and efficient way of getting that done.
I would encourage all of us, though, to try to beat the race against malnourished children, uneducated children, children experience violence. That runs very, very fast. And sometimes we run a lot slower than what's chasing the well-being of children.
I'm hoping that when we get this right, we'll create the boundaries In other words, stay within this, but anywhere within this, get the job done, no problem. And really, so that we can have different kinds of ways of doing business according to contexts.
Because of the war from 1998, we are saying this country has seen the death of 5.4 million people. In the recent displacement by M23, 90 people died. Now, when you look at all the disasters that we are talking about in the world, there's no disaster that I can remember that has impacted close to 1 million people. The Rwanda's genocide, it only touched 800 people, and everybody talks about it. DRC, you're talking about 5.4 million people, and nobody talks about it as a big thing. We've become numb to death in DRC. We've become numb to suffering of people in DRC. You'll hear people quoting Goma as the world rape capital. And we, by virtue of who we are, a Christian organization committed to justice, isn't this enough reason to cause World Vision to start asking the difficult question? Can we afford to keep quiet?
Let's think about what it'll take to actually get the strategy for the DRC to deliver on what it's promising to do, to help as many children into well-being as possible in the shortest period of time. Therefore, we're encouraging you to innovate.
It's exciting to bring together so many people who have a heart for this country and for the people of this country and wanting to see another DRC, which definitely is possible.
I'm just looking at the resourcing of development. How do you think the resourcing should take place? Should it be that the international community gives more, or do you think the mining community here should be asked to provide more funds?
It's a very good question on resources. It's more not where resources come from, but how the best use of them to do what. And it's really where we're struggling, because we have a limited amount of resources, but united together with the government investment, with the civil society and the faith-based organization, it's going to work. So the alignment and the complementarity is key, and that's really where we have a different forum to talk about it, and it's very important. The challenge will remain that it also has to happen at the decentralized level. And as you may know, for example, the investment decided nationally is not always reflected locally. And that's where your ears and your eyes on the ground. And that's why I always say to the team, muds on the boots. We have to go and see, then, that's where we can also see what works, what doesn't work, and where we can make a difference.